Because of this curse, Shiva was deprived of his share in the oblations of Vedic sacrifices. It was due to the curse of Daksha. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments in this connection that Lord Shiva was saved from the calamity of taking part with other demigods who were all materialistic. Lord Shiva is the greatest devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it is not fitting for him to eat or sit with materialistic persons like the demigods. Thus, the curse of Daksha was indirectly a blessing for Shiva, who would not have to eat or sit with the other demigods who were too materialistic. There is a practical example set for us by Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, who used to sit on the side of a latrine to chant Hare Krishna. Does everyone know what a latrine is? Anyone who doesn't know what a latrine is? Okay. I think it's a military term for toilet. Some people what? Yeah, I was explaining. Someone can correct me, but I think it's a military term for toilet. Actually, what they do is they dig a big ditch, and they put a little bit of a enclosure around it, and then you go inside and take care of your business. Specific type of business. So Gaurkishore Das Babaji says here that he used to sit on the side of a latrine and chant Hare Krishna. Many materialistic persons used to come and bother him and disturb his daily routine of chanting. So, to avoid their company, he used to sit by the side of a latrine where materialistic persons would not go because of the filth and obnoxious smell. However, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj was so great that he was accepted as the spiritual master of such a great personality as His Divine Grace, Om Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. The conclusion is that Lord Shiva behaved in his own way to avoid materialistic persons who might disturb him in his prosecution of devotional service. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Om Agana Timidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militangena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Gena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Brindavanishwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The verse again. I am tu deva yajana indro pendra bir babaha sahabagam na labatam deva ganadamaha. The demigods are eligible to share in the oblations of sacrifice, but Lord Shiva, who is the lowest of all demigods, should not have a share. So Srila Prabhupada in this purport sees a good example, or as he says, a practical example of someone in our lineage who was so desirous to avoid the association of materialistic people that he would actually go and chant his rounds beside the toilet, or in a place where everyone was going to pass stool and urine. And for him, it was it's explained that the smell that would emanate from the latrine was not as unbearable as the association of materialistic persons. So this is very, very instructive. Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, of course, is in the Babaji renounced order, which means that his practice is to chant the holy names mostly in solitary places. He's not actually in a situation where he's going out and preaching specifically, which is a different process in one sense altogether. So we have the Bhajananandi and the Goshtianandi processes. Jai Shri Radha Gokulananda ki Jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ji ki Jai. So there's interesting history about Gaurkishore Das Babaji. You might think someone who's able to become so renounced that maybe from birth, like we hear Shukadev Goswami, upon immediately leaving the womb, departed from his home and began to practice spiritual life. Let's explain that Gaurkishore Das Babaji, who appeared in the 1830s in East Bengal, was the son of a merchant named son of a merchant, and his name before taking initiation was Vamsi Das. He was married, and he lived a conventional life for more than 20 years. Actually, he worked as a grain broker. But as time passed, he found himself looking for something more in life, and his pursuit of spiritual practice increased. Then his wife passed away, and he left his business and went to Vrindavan and began to study under the different sadhus and Babajis there. Eventually, taking initiation from Srila Bhagavat Das Babaji, who was one of the foremost disciples of Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So this is how we have our lineage, which we can see here between, as far as I understand, Gaurkishore Das Babaji, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Jagannath Das Babaji were all relatively like contemporaries. They were all around in Navadvip at the same time, hearing from one another. Of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur taking refuge and inspiration from Jagannath Das Babaji, and it's explained that Gaurkishore Das Babaji used to go and regularly hear from Bhaktivinoda Thakur when he would speak on Srimad Bhagavatam. Gaurkishore Das Babaji, there's many different pastimes. It's explained he became famous amongst the great devotees of Vrindavan and was awarded the exalted title of Bhajananandi, which refers to one who is achieving ultimate bliss through solitary meditation. For ourselves, even though Gaurkishore Das Babaji is the spiritual master of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, his mood was quite different. He was very much in the Goshtianandi mood, which was to spread Krishna consciousness, same as his father Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Interesting contrast is that Gaurkishore Das Babaji sometimes would walk around completely naked, or with his kopan or Brahminical underwear very loose. So we can say that he's not really in the spirit of going out and attracting people to Krishna consciousness. Certainly this is something we shouldn't try here. I'm sure that the local community would not find it very inspiring if our preaching methods became one of Gaurkishore Das Babaji's example. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, actually in quite stark contrast, used to dress his sannyasi disciples in suits in order for them to go out and preach to the British and the cultured upper class of society. So his approach was vastly different in one sense, that he would actually make Krishna consciousness accessible to others in such a way that he would engage everything in Krishna's service. One understand also sometimes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would visit Radhakund in a Rolls Royce, right? He would actually go to Radhakund in a Rolls Royce. It's funny, last night I was going to the flat from the temple, and I was talking on the mobile phone, and one gentleman and lady came up to me and they were like, "You're a Hare Krishna, I didn't know you could use a mobile phone." I said, "Well, we have to use cars and trains and mobile phone." Then we started talking a bit. They were, huh? Modern Krishna. Yeah. You have to use everything in Krishna's service. Sometimes people get it when you try to explain the process of Yukta Vairagya, but sometimes externally. It's interesting the concepts that people have, especially when they see a monk or they see someone from a specific faith group and they see you doing something. It made me realize how, in one sense, how careful we have to be, because, our every action and activity out in the public eye is seen and people are looking, and it makes a very deep impression upon people. Sometimes we may not know the impression that we're giving off if we're acting in a frivolous way, or even like that situation, talking on a mobile phone. People had a certain specific concept of the way that we should be acting, but it was good because it encouraged them to speak, and then we had about 15-20 minute conversation, so it was nice. So Gaurkishore Das Babaji, as I mentioned, he was the spiritual master of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Gaurkishore Das Babaji and Bhaktivinoda Thakur were very close associates. Bhaktivinoda Thakur held Gaurkishore Das Babaji in very high regard because of his dedication to Lord Chaitanya and chanting the holy names. And he encouraged Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to take initiation from him. Gaurkishore Das Babaji, as you can see, is not someone who was very eager to take on any disciples. In fact, he didn't have any disciples. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur approached him in a very humble mood and spirit and requested him to please accept him as his disciple, that he had been ordered by his father to surrender to him and accept him as his spiritual master. And Gaurkishore Das Babaji, what I recall, he said, well, the next time I see Lord Chaitanya, I'll ask him what he thinks, whether I should accept you as my disciple or not. So some time passed, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur saw Gaurkishore Das Babaji again and asked him, "Babaji Maharaj, have you made a decision? Will you please accept me as your disciple?" And Gaurkishore Das Babaji, he said, "Did you see Lord Chaitanya? Did you get a chance to ask him?" And he said, "Yes, I saw him, but I forgot to ask him." So he said, "Okay, please, next time you please ask." But Gaurkishore Das Babaji really wasn't interested. And we can see that actually Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is a very, very advanced scholarly person personality. You know, he was learned, I think, from the age of 5 or 7, something like that. He knew the entire Bhagavad Gita, could give recitation on, and he was appointed as one of the top astrologers for a university, a position which he later renounced, and just exceptionally scholarly person. So you can imagine he's approaching Gaurkishore Das Babaji, who's complete renunciant, walking around, you know, naked, just chanting, and he's thinking, how can I initiate such a qualified person as you in his, you know, in his humility? Actually reminds of the kind of the pastimes of, Lokanath Goswami and Narottam Das Thakur, how Lokanath Swami also didn't want any disciples, and he used to keep himself to himself, and Narottam Das Thakur would every morning go to the place where Lokanath Maharaj would respond to the call of nature, and he would clean it, you know, with his hands, and sweep the area and make it very nice, so that when Lokanath Swami would go there, he would be like, you know, what's happening here? And he would see that every day he would come and that area would be cleaned. And in his humility, Narottam Das Thakur every day was going early in the morning before Lokanath Goswami would go there, and he would clean this place. And then once Lokanath Goswami decided he wanted to know who this person was that was coming every day to clean up this area, so he went very early in the morning and hid in the bushes to watch, and he saw Narottam Das Thakur coming and with his own hands cleaning up the stool and urine that was being passed in this area every day, just to make the area nice and clean for Lokanath Goswami. And Lokanath Goswami, when he saw this, he was overwhelmed by his humility and dedication, and of course accepted him. So there's a similar thing with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Gaurkishore Das Babaji, that he was so persistent with his desire to accept initiation from Gaurkishore Das Babaji. He was begging him daily, and it came to the point actually where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that if you're not going to accept me as your disciple, then my life is useless. There's no point to me continuing my life, so I may as well just, you know, kill myself and be finished with all of this. And Gaurkishore Das Babaji realized that this person is serious about that, so he accepted him as his disciple. And what was the name that he was, no, his Bimala Prasad, but when he took initiation, it was Vrisha Bhanavidayate. Yeah, Vrisha Bhanavidayate. Prabhu, when he gave initiation to him. There are some other pastimes of Gaurkishore Das Babaji. Yeah, we can read some. Here's one. 1908, Srila Gaurkishore lost his physical vision. When his eyesight started deteriorating, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati requested him to go to Calcutta for treatment. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, too, for the same reason, repeatedly asked him to go there. But he was uninterested. He said, as long as I can see Krishna in my heart of hearts, I do not need to go to the eye doctor. So he wasn't concerned about his own physicality as long as he was able to see Krishna in his heart. There's one pastime about Babaji Maharaj, how he used to eat. It says he became renowned as the brightest gem among spiritual practitioners, but it was not always easy to understand his actions. Sometimes he wore his begging bowl as a hat. He worshipped in an outhouse and beat with an umbrella those who wanted initiation from him. In his humility, he could not entertain requests to be anyone's spiritual authority. His behavior was considered especially unusual in Navadvip, where many conservative priests and intellectuals resided at that time. So it seems that Vrindavan was a place more where Babajis would gather and perform their bhajan. But Navadvip was actually, the center of learning and philosophy, and so many scholars would gather there, and so it was quite a different setting. And then you would have someone like Gorkishore Das Babaji walking around amongst so many scholarly souls. So his state of love of God bordered on divine madness, and yet his ecstatic symptoms could be corroborated by Vaishnava scriptures. Learned authorities were able to ascertain that his seemingly eccentric behavior was in fact symptoms of the highest stage of love of God. Sometimes while in these exalted states, Babaji Maharaj found distasteful foods to be just like nectar. Oblivious to the external world, he would offer such food to Krishna, then relish the remnants. For example, he would eat raw rice or other grains lightly soaked in water or in Ganges mud. One day he picked up an unripe eggplant from the market and sat down at the base of a jahu tree in Baganbari. He cut the eggplant into pieces and dipped them into Ganges water and put a tulsi leaf on them. He offered them to his Ishtadev and sang a song of offering. The song was, "O Lord Chaitanya, please accept the worship of this fallen soul." Then he said to his deity, "I do not know the right method of cooking this, but please eat a little of this food." As soon as he said this, his voice became choked and his body turned bright red and began to swell, while tears flowed from his eyes in streams, soaking his face and chest. Seeing these signs of love, Lalita Didi, a close friend, was amazed. When the transcendental emotion subsided nearly an hour later, he again sang a song, putting his deity to sleep. He ate the unripe eggplant. His face showed expressions of great pleasure and happiness, more intense than one would make if tasting Panchamrita. So Gorkishore Das Babaji was very much on the off the bodily platform, and was living very, very simple life. To explain that this mood of Gorkishore Das Babaji is one that we should try to follow in the footsteps of, but is certainly not one to be imitated. And the process that's given for us is the process of sadhana bhakti, where we're actually trying to cultivate and develop a spirit of renunciation that also eventually leaves us off the bodily platform, but is not necessarily one of going into the forest or living in the jungle or walking around naked like that. There's a nice one lecture Srila Prabhupada spoke about Gorkishore Das Babaji, and he was explaining about the humility of Gorkishore Das Babaji and the exaltedness of how Gorkishore Das Babaji, although he's explaining that spiritual life it's not a bluff, it's actually a great science. And he says one has to study the science from a bona fide spiritual master. Study it does not mean that one has to be very highly qualified in academic education. Spiritual science does not depend on one's academic education. You'll be surprised to know that my grand spiritual master, my spiritual master's spiritual master, he was illiterate. And my spiritual master was the greatest learned scholar of his age. Now how he became the disciple of an illiterate man. So, but that Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, his name was Gorkishore Das Babaji, my spiritual master, my grand spiritual master. So he was illiterate, but when you asked him some questions, some intricate questions of spiritual significance, he'll answer you immediately, very nicely. That is realization. So Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj was on such an elevated platform, and this point is that sometimes it may be easy to think that we're studying and studying and studying so that we can espouse, and everyone can think that we're very learned and great souls, that we know everything, or we have some great high academic qualification. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took initiation from someone who was actually, illiterate. But this person was exceptionally learned and advanced in spiritual knowledge, so much so that, he could reveal the highest truths of, the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna, and he didn't need to have a, high degree or some high academic education, because Krishna is residing within the heart of all living entities. And when we contact Krishna, then Krishna can reveal through us so much high knowledge. It's not that we have to have some superior education or be exaltedly learned. Sometimes it's easy to mistake this process and think that it's just maybe for elite people, but actually Krishna consciousness is for everyone. At the end of Gorkishore Das Babaji's life, when he was about to leave, there was actually quite a debate that took place around his departure. He departed on the 16th of November in 1915, and he was explained that the head priests of Navadvip's temples and ashrams, they began to argue amongst themselves about where to place Gorkishore Das Babaji into samadhi. And basically their motivation was simply because they knew that Gorkishore Das Babaji was such a great soul that if they put him into samadhi at one of their own temples, then he would attract so many visitors. And this would, of course, bring in revenue and bring people to their temple and make their temple the most popular. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he began to debate and argue with them, saying that I'm the only disciple and I will decide where, my Guru Maharaj is to be placed into samadhi. So evidently the debate became so heated that the local police were called. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur challenged all of these priests by saying that it is, anyone who has, committed sinful activities in the last 24 hours, I think first he said in the last year, in the last 6 months, in the last 3 months, in the last month, even in the last 24 hours, anyone who has, committed some sinful activity or had illicit association with someone from the opposite sex, he said, then that person is disqualified from touching the body of such a saint. He said, so therefore I challenge, which of you can come forward and actually touch the body of Gorkishore Das Babaji and place him into samadhi? And the police were kind of like stunned, because here you have Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur on one side and you have all these, the head priests of all the mutts. And it's explained that one by one, all of them turned around and walked away. So Gorkishore Das, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he presented this challenge, and then he placed his Guru Maharaj into samadhi, not just down from the Yogapith. This is actually, I think, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Chaitanya Mat area there. So, yeah. And then he was on the following day, November 17th, 1915, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur laid his Guru to rest on a newly formed sandbar of the Ganges at Kuliagram. Oh, that's right. He was placed into samadhi in Kuliagram, and then his Pushpa Samadhi is there. The spot was near a place where Srila Gorkishore loved to chant the names of Krishna. Gorkishore had reached the highest levels of love of God, and his disciple Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur vowed to give his disciple that same love. So, like like this. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur carried on with his preaching and passed on this gift of pure love of Krishna to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is continuing to carry it on now into the modern day. So, Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. So anyone has any comments or would like to add something? Devotees always are a wealth of memories of past times and tales. Smarhari Prabhu, you have something you'd like to add or some correction?